Hello again, everyone. Welcome to our Blue Skies Ahead Resolving ER Denials with Q&A Activity webinar. My name is Ashley Decoto, and I am a specialist with our Provider Outreach and Education team. On the call with me today is my friend and colleague, Leanne Foster, who will be helping out with the chat. This webinar is part 2 of our 2-part series on Evaluation and Management Emergency Department Services. Yesterday, Leanne held the Part 1 webinar, which provided a more comprehensive overview of ER visit guidelines. If you were unable to attend her session yesterday, the recording will be available within the next week or so in the training center of our website and also on our YouTube channel. We will also have a recording of this session available in the training center on our website, and Leanne will be adding a link for the training center to the chat. And it will be available on our website for the next 60 to 90 days, barring any technical issues with the recording. And you can access this without having to access YouTube at work, as we do recognize that not everyone is able to access YouTube from work. The recording will also be available on our YouTube channel as long as the information remains relevant and current. Also in our training center, you can find a copy of today's presentation, so if you haven't already grabbed that, it is still available for download if you'd like to have the presentation to follow along or maybe to take notes, though it's not required. We are taking questions through the chat today, which again Leanne will be monitoring. I will check in with Leanne at the end of the presentation, time permitting, for any unanswered questions in the chat. We did have some questions that were pre-submitted with registration, and I will be answering those throughout the presentation today. All right, for our agenda, we'll start by doing a brief recap from Leanne's Part 1 webinar yesterday. Again, if you were not able to attend that session, we encourage you to review the recording from the Encore page on our website or on our YouTube channel once those become available. After the Part 1 recap, I will be sharing the top denials and rejections for emergency department visits. Then the remainder of our session will be the interactive Q&A activity. This webinar today will be covering the professional billing of these services, not the facility billing. And then one last thing before we get started, we did have a couple pre-submitted questions asking if we had any updates. We do not have any updates on emergency department E&M services to share during today's webinar. But again, I will be providing our top denials and rejections, which are based on recent claims data. This slide contains the acronyms that I'll be using today, and I've gathered these all in one place so that you have this for reference. I know some of you may be familiar with these, but I did include these as we may have some attending who are a little newer to billing Medicare and maybe not as familiar with these acronyms. Again, if you've not already downloaded today's presentation, it is still available in the Training Center on our website under Live Events. So please feel free to download that so that you have this acronym slide as a reference. All right, let's jump in with a quick recap of Leanne's session from yesterday. So E&M services provided in the emergency department are going to be billed with the CPT codes you see listed here, 99281 through 99285. An emergency department is a hospital-based facility that operates 24 hours a day for the provision of unscheduled or episodic services for patients that are presenting for immediate medical attention. Your level of service for these codes is chosen using medical decision making only. Time may not be used in selecting level of service for emergency department visits. Notice also that these codes for emergency department services do not distinguish between new and established patients or initial and subsequent visits the way office or outpatient codes and your hospital care codes do. Next up, I want to share what our top denials and rejections have been at WPS for emergency department services. These denials and rejections are based on claims data that I pulled for those emergency department visit codes 99281 through 99285. All right, so first we have our top denials for emergency department services. First on the list is physician not eligible to receive payments. And this type of denial would happen for providers who are not eligible to receive payment from Medicare for that service, such as maybe a chiropractor or a physical therapist in private practice who's billing for an E&M service. The next one on our list is claims denied while the patient is in a period of managed care. And this would happen when they're enrolled in a Medicare Advantage plan. So make sure to verify eligibility. And if the patient does have a Medicare Advantage plan, the claim must be billed to that plan. Original or fee-for-service Medicare does not process those claims. The next denial we have is one visit or consult per day, which is exactly what it sounds like. And this falls into what Leanne talked about yesterday. If you bill more than one visit per day from either the same physician or two physicians from the same group and of the same specialty, you'll receive this type of denial. You want to combine your documentation in those cases and bill for just one service to avoid these denials. Our next top denial was for the patient being enrolled in hospice. For patients in hospice, all care related to that terminal hospice diagnosis is included in the hospice care. For services not related to the hospice diagnosis, you will want to bill with the appropriate modifier. When a patient is in hospice, your E&M claims are going to your E&M claims billed without a modifier are going to deny this way. All right, and our last top denial for emergency department services is expenses incurred after coverage terminated. And this one could happen, for example, if maybe your patient, let's say, had Part B coverage last year in 2025 and elected not to receive Part B coverage for 2026. So your services this year would give you this type of denial. Maybe they're still working and have decided that they can't afford to pay the Part B premiums in addition to their group health plan. This denial could also occur if your patient was on Medicare because of a disability, but now they no longer qualify as disabled. So you'll want to make sure that you're verifying eligibility to confirm that your patient has active Part B coverage. All right, and here we have the top rejections for emergency department services. For our first rejection, we have rendering physician number invalid or missing. So for these, it may say denied on the reason code, but this is actually a rejected claim. Also in your remittance advice, the reason code actually says to submit a new claim, which is exactly what you would do here. Double check that you've included the physician's NPI and that it is the correct NPI, and then resubmit that claim. Our next rejection here is claim lacks information needed for adjudication. So something is missing from the claim. And you'll look at the other reason codes on your remittance advice, which will give you a little more information. This could be really any of the items required for a claim to process, such as the patient's date of birth or your place of service, for example. So you'll want to double check your claim form and make sure that all of the required elements are included and resubmit your claim. Next on our list is claims for those patients who have railroad Medicare. And those claims must be submitted to the MAC or the Medicare Administrative Contractor who processes railroad claims. And that will be Palmetto for your railroad claims. You can verify that the patient has Railroad Medicare by checking their Medicare card, which would show Railroad Retirement Board and a red strip across the bottom of their card. For the fourth rejection listed here, we have missing, incomplete, or invalid provider identifier. So this rejection will occur if you're missing the NPI or have an incorrect NPI in items 32 or 33 on the 1500 paper claim form, or the electronic equivalent loops and segments on your 837P electronic transaction. So this would happen, for example, if maybe you had a typo and keyed a wrong digit, or maybe you entered the NPI for the wrong practice location. Our last rejection is incomplete or invalid information for other insurance. So if your claim is rejecting this way, you may want to check item 11 on your 1500 claim form, which is a required field. You must include other insurance primary to Medicare in this field. If there's no insurance primary to Medicare, enter the word none. Leaving that blank on a paper claim form will cause your claim to reject this way. Now for your 837P electronic transactions, make sure that you're including the primary insurance policy number, but if there's not insurance primary to Medicare, you would leave this blank for your electronic claims. I've included this slide here as a reference to help kind of summarize what I just talked about for your emergency visit denials and rejections. For your rejections, you'll fix the error and resubmit the claim. Remember that for rejections, the claim was not able to fully process, meaning a claim determination was not yet made, and the claim does not have appeal rights. Those must be corrected and resubmitted. For denials, your next step will depend on the type of denial that you receive, and your remittance advice will really be your best source to determine what's next. It may indicate that you need to resubmit your claim, in which case you can correct the error and resubmit. In some cases, you may be able to correct a minor error through a clerical error reopening using our Secure Net Access portal. This might be a keying error for your place of service or your rendering provider's NPI, for example. And then you'll have denials that will require you to appeal if you disagree with a claim determination. Your remittance advice would include remark code MA01, which indicates that you have appeal rights. We did have a pre-submitted question asking how to file appeals, so we did include a link in the last bullet on this slide, which has some information on how to appeal a claim. All right, now we're going to shift gears into our interactive Q&A activity. And we've designed this to be a fun way to test your knowledge. So we'll be launching a poll for each question. And even if you aren't 100% sure on the correct answer, we'd love for you to participate and give it your best shot. I'll give you a moment to lock in your answers, and then I'll walk through the correct answer for each question. Leanne will be adding a few resource links to the chat, and I'll be briefly highlighting some key takeaways from these resources as we go, but I also encourage you to save each of these to review later. And a few of these may be some things you saw yesterday in Leanne's webinar, if you were able to attend that, but we want to make sure that you have these handy for our activity today. All right, so our first question is level of service for emergency department codes may be chosen using either time or medical decision making, true or false? I'll give you just a few more moments for the first one as everyone's kind of getting used to how to operate the polls. All right, the answer for this one is false. Time is not used in choosing level of service for the emergency department visits, as these services are typically provided on a variable intensity basis, often involving multiple encounters with several patients over an extended period of time, which really makes it difficult for physicians to provide accurate estimates of time for each patient. Only medical decision making is used to choose level of service for emergency department visits. We received a few questions asking specifically about medical decision making, and we're not going to go into detail today on medical decision making, but Leanne and I have scheduled a webinar series in this format specifically on choosing your level of service. And that series starts in late April, and registration should be open within the next week or so. We also have on our YouTube channel a video on choosing your level of service, and I've asked Leanne to place a link in the chat for that video. Our next question is, which place of service is used for emergency department visits 99281 through 99285? Is it A, 11, B, 12, C, 21, or D, 23? Got a few more getting their answers in. Give it just another moment. All right, the answer here is D, 23. Remember, you will bill based on how the facility has the patient classified. So if they are registered in the emergency department, you are able to bill these codes with place of service 23. If they have been admitted or placed under observation, you would use the hospital inpatient or observation codes with either place of service 21 for inpatient hospital or 22 for outpatient hospital. Next up, codes 99281 through 99285 are payable even if the patient's condition is not an emergency. True or false? All right, everybody got their answers in pretty quickly on that one. The answer to this one is true. Medicare recognizes that patients may present to the emergency room with a condition that does not necessarily constitute an emergency. As long as services provided in the ER are medically necessary, it does not matter what the condition is. Meaning, it's not based on a diagnosis, but the services do need to be medically necessary. Moving right along. Our next question is, which of these codes is billable for a patient not registered as an ER patient, but seen at the outpatient ER as a convenience? Is it A, 99281, B, 99282, C, 99215, or D, 99221? I'm getting some feedback that my audio is a little scratchy. Give me one moment to adjust that.
Leanne, could you confirm if that's any better? That's much, much more clear. Thank you.
Oh, it's much more comfortable without the headset too. Thank you for letting me know.
You're welcome.
All right. And it looks like most have gotten their answer in for this one. The answer here is C, 99215, which is one of the office or other outpatient codes. So in a scenario where the patient meets their physician at the ER as a convenience, but is not registered as an emergency room patient, the physician would bill one of the office or other outpatient codes, 99202 through 99215. Keep in mind, again, you will bill your service based on how the facility has the patient classified. So if they're registered as an ER patient, you would bill one of the emergency department codes that we're looking at today, 99281 through 99285. If they are under observation or have been admitted to the hospital as an inpatient, you would bill the hospital inpatient or observation codes. There are situations, like described in this question, where the physician has asked the patient to meet them at the emergency room, either as a convenience for the physician or even a convenience to the patient. In those situations, you would not use the emergency department codes. Again, you would use the office or other outpatient codes, 99202 through 99215. And our next question is, both initial nursing facility services and emergency department services are payable on the same date of service. True or false? We'll give it just another moment. All right, the answer for this one is false. This is based on information in the Medicare Claims Processing Manual, Chapter 12, which is first in your list of links for this activity. Let's go out there and take a look. So I've opened up the Claims Processing Manual, Chapter 12, and I'm going to scroll down here in the table of contents to find information on emergency department services. Section 30.6 is all about evaluation and management services, and the area we will specifically look at right now is the subsection 30.6.11 for emergency department visits. So once I click on that section, it took me right to this area, and there's some helpful information here in sections A, B, and C, but information related to this particular question is here in section D, emergency department or office visit on the same day as nursing facility admission. And what this tells us is that emergency department visits provided the same day as nursing facility admission are not payable. Any evaluation and management service provided the same day as a nursing facility admission are included in the payment for the nursing facility care. And this would include any emergency department services. One more thing I'll show you in this manual before we head back to the presentation is section E, which gives some information on situations where both the patient's personal or their primary care physician and the ED physician are involved in the emergency department care. So the first bullet point here gives the situation where the personal physician sees the patient in the emergency room and subsequently admits them to the hospital. In that case, the personal physician would only bill the appropriate level of the inpatient hospital codes 99221 through 99223. This is because all E&M services provided by that physician are included in the initial hospital care, meaning they would not bill both the emergency department codes and the initial hospital care. Now, the ED physician in this first scenario would bill for their services using the emergency department visit codes. Now, in the next bullet, we have a scenario where the primary care physician and the emergency department physician both see the patient in the emergency room, and that patient is sent home by the ED physician. Assuming that they're of different specialties and not in the same group, they may both bill for their service using the emergency department visit codes. Now, if the primary care physician just advises the patient to go to the emergency room and speaks to the ED physician by phone, only that ED physician would bill for emergency department services. The primary care physician, or their personal physician as they call it here, would not bill. All right, let's head back to the presentation, but if you're following along, this manual is a good one to keep open for some of our remaining questions, or even to bookmark for review later. All right, for our next question, we have a scenario. Dr. Foster and Dr. Gary are both family practice physicians from ABC Medical. Both physicians see Betty in the emergency department today. Which of the following is true? Is it A, both physicians can bill an ED visit? B, Dr. Foster can bill ED and Dr. Gary can bill an office visit? C, combine documentation and bill for one ED visit? Or D, both physicians should bill an office visit? All right. The answer for this one is C, combine documentation and bill for just one emergency department visit. And this is because evaluation and management services, again, are per diem services, meaning one per day. So if the same physician provides more than one service in a day, the documentation is combined and just one service is billed based on the combined documentation. And this includes when two physicians from the same group and of the same specialty are each providing a service on the same day. So in our example, because Dr. Foster and Dr. Gary are in the same group, ABC Medical, and they are both family practice physicians, so they are the same specialty, they may only bill one service using their combined documentation. In cases where you have two different physicians who are not in the same group and not the same specialty, they may both bill for their services as long as they're medically necessary. For example, on the last slide, I talked about the situation from the claims processing manual where both the patient's primary care physician and the ED physician saw the patient in the ER and both billed for their service using the emergency department visit codes. But again, they were not the same specialty and not from the same group. All right. Next, we have another scenario. Dr. Keegan sees Patty today in the ED and admits her to the hospital. Dr. Keegan may bill both the ED visit and an initial hospital care code. True or false?
Okay, the answer for this one is false. If Dr. Keegan sees Patty in the emergency room and subsequently decided to admit Patty to an inpatient hospital stay, Dr. Keegan would only bill for the initial hospital or observation care code. Same thing would apply if Dr. Keegan decided to place Patty under observation. He would not bill both the emergency department services and the hospital inpatient or observation codes. He would only bill one of the initial hospital inpatient or observation codes, 99221 through 99223. Our next question is, urgent care centers bill using ED visit codes 99281 through 99285. True or false? All right, answers came in super fast on that one too, and it looks like most of you got this one right. The answer to this one is false. So urgent care centers typically do not meet the requirement of an emergency department because they are enrolled as a group clinic. E&M services provided in an urgent care center would be billed with the office or other outpatient codes with place of service 20 for urgent care facility. Our next question is, for services provided in an ED and billed with 99281 through 99285, when must the emergency department remain open? Is it A, Monday through Thursday, B, Monday through Friday, C, 10 hours a day, or D, 24 hours a day? All right, 100% of you got this one right. The answer is D, 24 hours a day. So emergency departments must operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And this kind of ties back to our last question a little bit on urgent care centers who might only be open 10 to 12 hours a day. So they do not operate 24 hours a day and don't meet the definition of an emergency department. So again, your emergency departments are hospital-based facilities that are available 24 hours a day for the provision of unscheduled services for patients that are presenting for immediate medical attention. So if the facility does not meet that definition, you would not bill using the ED visit codes 99281 through 99285. All right, the next question is, which of these codes may be used for ED consultations provided in person? Select all that apply from these options. So we have A, 99281, B, 99285, C, G0425, or D, G0427. Give it just another moment or so. Okay, the answer is A and B, meaning if another physician is called in to treat the patient in person, so they are there in the emergency department with the patient, they would bill the ED codes 99281 through 99285. They would not use the G codes. For this question, which codes may be used for ED consultations provided via telehealth? Select all that apply from these options. Is it A, 99281, B, 99285, C, G0425, or D, G0427? All right, I think everyone's getting the idea on this one. Just another moment. All right, so the answer is C and D. So unlike the last question, this is a situation where another physician, like a specialist, is providing a consultation via telehealth. In those scenarios, that physician providing the consultation via telehealth would bill one of the telehealth consultation codes for emergency department or inpatient services, which are G0425 through G0427. All right, the next question is which code is used for a physician supervising clinical staff providing a service in the emergency department? Is it A, 99281, B, 99282, C, 99211, or D, G0425? All right, the answer here is A, 99281, which is billed by the physician for services that are provided by clinical staff in the emergency department. These are scenarios where the services provided might not require presence of the physician. For example, maybe the patient has come into the emergency department to have stitches removed. Documentation would need to support that medically necessary services were provided by the clinical staff. And this is not a code that we see billed often for emergency department services, and we actually pulled some claims data for this code. WPS only paid this code for J5 and J8 600 times total over the last 6 months. So we really don't see this one billed that often. All right, next. Which of the following must the documentation include to bill 99291 or 99292 when care is provided in the emergency department? And you can select all that apply from these options. Is it A, critical illness or injury, B, moderate MDM, C, 30 minutes minimum, or D, acute impairment to a vital organ system? I'm going to give it just another moment. Okay, so the answer here is A, C, and D. In order to bill for the critical care codes 99291 or 99292, the services provided must be treating a critically ill or injured patient who has an acute impairment to one or more vital organ systems. The visit must include high complexity medical decision making, and the time required to bill these codes is at least 30 minutes. If these requirements are not met, you would bill the emergency department codes 99281 through 99285. There's more information on critical care in the E&M Services Guide, which is the second in the list of links for this activity. Let's open that up and take a quick look. So I've opened up the E&M Services Guide, and I'm going to scroll down to page 2, where we have the table of contents. And for each of these sections, you can click on the title, and it will take you straight to that part of this guide. So I'll click on Critical Care Services, which takes me right to this section on critical care. So the top paragraph in this section outlines the definition of critical care, which does follow CPT guidelines. So for services provided in the emergency department, you want to look here to make sure these requirements are met before using the critical care codes. So again, the care is treating a critically ill or injured patient when one or more vital organ systems are acutely impaired. There must be a probability of imminent or life-threatening deterioration of the patient's condition, and the service involves high complexity medical decision making. It also tells us here in this next paragraph that during time spent providing critical care, you can't provide services to any other patient. So for services in the emergency department, you really want to make sure this requirement is met before billing 99291 or 99292 rather than the emergency department codes. All right, so that was just a quick overview, but I wanted you all to know that this section was here in case you do want more information on critical care. I'm going to head back to the presentation and on to our last question. So our last question is a scenario. Dr. Bob and Nurse Gary are in the same group and treat Billy in the emergency department. Nurse Gary provided the substantive portion of the medical decision making. Which of the following are true? Is it A, Dr. Bob and Nurse Gary each bill with the FS modifier? B, Nurse Gary bills with the FS modifier? C, Nurse Gary bills with no modifier? Or D, Dr. Bob bills with the FS modifier? All right. The answer for this one is B, because this is a split shared service where Nurse Gary provided the substantive portion of the medical decision making, which means he would bill for the service using the appropriate emergency department code and the FS modifier. We do have a page on our website for billing split shared services, and this page is the last of the links in the chat for this activity. And I'll pull that page up now to show you just a couple things. So the first thing on this page I want to point out is the FS modifier. The practitioner who provided the substantive portion of either the time or the medical decision making will bill the service with the FS modifier. The main thing I'd like to show you on this page is the section on group practice. Split shared services are E&M services in a facility where the physician and non-physician practitioner work together as a group to provide care. For the purposes of split shared services, there's not the requirement that both providers are under the same tax ID. So this is not like for E&M services where CMS has defined a group by same tax ID and same specialty. For split shared, CMS does not define a group practice. So you would need to have an agreement or some type of contract which identifies how payment will be made between the parties involved in the split shared service. All right, I'm going to head back to the presentation, but if you are looking for more information on split shared services, I encourage you to read this page on our website. Here we have a few resources. First, we have the E&M Services Guide, which includes information on all types of E&M services, including where we looked at that information on critical care services. Next, we have the Medicare Claims Processing Manual, Chapter 12, which has a section on E&M services, including the section we looked at specifically on E&M services provided in an emergency department. And then lastly, we have the page on our website that we just looked at with information on split shared services. All right, now I'll check in with Leanne. Leanne, do we have any unanswered questions in the chat?
Ashley, we just had a couple come in. And the first one is if the patient comes in on 2/1 of 26, is not seen by the provider until 2/2 of 26, what date of service should be on the claim for the provider?
The provider would bill the date of the encounter or the date the encounter begins. So in that example, if they didn't see him until the second day, that second day would be their date of service.
Okay, thank you. And one other question, and I think it has to do with that last example that you did. It was talking about Nurse Gary, indicating that Nurse Gary would need to be a billable provider, assuming Gary is an MP and not just a nurse.
Correct. In those split shared scenarios, I think that's the question they're asking about. Both providers would need to be eligible to bill Medicare to provide a part of the service for a split shared service. So in the example with Nurse Gary would be a nurse practitioner who's enrolled and eligible to bill Medicare for that service.
Okay, and we had one more that's a follow-up to the date of service question we just had. The follow-up is the date of service isn't the date of registration in the ED.
Not necessarily. I mean, in the example that was provided, where I think what we're saying is Betty arrives at the emergency department on Monday. Maybe it's 11 o'clock at night, and Dr. Gary maybe doesn't see Betty until 12:30 a.m. the following day. Dr. Gary's going to use the following day as his date of service, even though Betty got there on Monday.
Okay, Ashley, we don't have any other questions in the chat that have not been answered.
All right, great. Thanks, Leanne. So if you do think of any additional questions, you have 7 days from today to submit those. And you'll send those to our education mailbox. And make sure to include the title of this webinar, Blue Skies Ahead, Resolving ER Denials, in the subject line so that they make sure those emails come to Leanne and I. Please keep in mind that we're not able to access any claims history, so you will want to contact customer service for any claims related questions. In a few minutes, you will receive an email to thank you for attending, and you don't want to delete this one without reading it. The email contains your certificate of achievement. It will have your name and contact hours in case you need to turn that in for credit towards continuing education units. If you do not receive the email, a few things may have happened. First, you may want to check your spam or junk folder. Also, be sure to add messenger at webex.com to your safe sender list so that any future messages will show up in your inbox. Also, if you joined us by phone only, you would not have received this email, as there's not a way for us to capture your email systematically from our attendance record. But no need to worry. If you did join by phone, you are able to email us with the phone number that you joined with to request your certificate of attendance. And Leanne will be adding that email address to the chat. Lastly, please take a few minutes to complete the survey. Tell us what you liked, what we can do better, and this is your opportunity to also suggest topics for future education. You have a few different options to take the survey. You can use the link in the chat, or when you exit today, you'll be prompted to go to an external site, and that external site is the CMS Qualtrics page. The prompt will look like the picture we have shown here with a little yellow triangle, and we included that image here on the slide so that you know this is safe. It's not malware or anything like that. For those that are listening through our website or through YouTube, you also have the same opportunity to provide feedback. You will have a survey card at the end of the presentation, and you can scroll to the end to see the link, and it's also available in the description. All right, that does conclude our webinar. On behalf of myself, Leanne, and all of Provider Outreach, we thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We very much appreciate your participation today and hope to see you again at future events. We look forward to your survey feedback, and you may now disconnect.